Everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Arun. I'm Solutions Architect, MCT, working with Novintech, which is one of the best organization to work with. And today we are going to describe Azure Bastion. So let's get started. In order to understand the concept of Azure Bastion, let's take an hypothetical situation where we have this Azure virtual network. All right. And we are running VM here. Let's suppose there are two VMs that is here, and the situation is our developers are working remotely. Okay, that's the situation. So here is the developer who is outside your network. Okay, and this guy needs to access these VMs. Okay, that's the situation. But this guy is remote, so it simply means there is internet in between, correct? And if internet is there, then exposing these VM on any port to the internet is a red flag, right? Which is not good. So what will happen? What can we do? The first thing that we can do, we can create a Bastion server here, okay? A Bastion server, a VM, okay? RDP VM. Here we have created, let's suppose, a Bastion server, okay? Now we can give access to these VMs on to this Bastion server, okay? This is not Azure Bastion. This is a Bastion on a VM, RDP server, virtual machine. And now this guy can simply go over the internet, access this Bastion and access these VM. But here their situation, there is two things which is not good and create an issue. That's why I made it red. First of all, even this Bastion needs to open 22 or 3389 like RDP or SSH port publicly so that these folks can access, correct? And publicly opening these port is no, correct? It will it will be risk for all those kind of attacks coming from the internet, right? So this is not a good solution. So what will we do? We can solve the problem with the help of Azure Bastion instead of VM Bastion. Let's deploy Azure Bastion service, which is your PaaS service, which is managed service. Okay. So if it is a Azure Bastion, which is the topic of our video, then it will solve the problem. How come? Because if it is a Bastion, then if this guy tried to access over the internet, then this request will come here, and this Bastion is still talking to these VMs over port 22 or 3389, but this Bastion, we no need to open 22 or 389. This request is going over HTTPS or 443 TLS, HTML, right? That's how it is going. And this thing is not publicly exposed, like these two ports. RDP thing is not publicly exposed. It is just the HTTP 443. All right. Now, if we have multiple virtual network, even though this Azure Bastion can help us, but before we go there, let's try to dig it a little more deeper. Azure Bastion is better than the VM in the situation is because first of all, uh, Azure Bastion, we are not exposing anything to the internet, okay, not even enabling RDP or SSH on Bastion. So it work on HTML over TLS 443. All right. This is first thing. Now, if you are wondering why can't we use VPN? VPN we use and we can solve this problem. Okay, we can prepare a VPN tunnel to this virtual network and we can solve this problem. Why Azure Bastion? Well, that can works too. But if we are deploying VPN, and there are certain things, for example, in point to site VPN, because this guy is remote, right? There is a client configuration involved, okay, which means certificates, client software, integration with Radius or Entra ID, a lot of things, extra configuration. Then we need extra infra. What infra? We need VPN gateway, correct? We need public IP, and there is a bandwidth cost as well. And if misconfigured, then this connection could be hacked or could open broader network access than intended, like lateral movement risk. Okay. And third, we still relies on exposing RDP in case of VPN, right? But here we are not exposing any RDP on Azure Bastion service. All right, which may not meet strict security policies opening RDP for the people coming from outside. Correct? So, Azure Bastion. Azure Bastion is a perfect fit for this kind of scenario where no RDP or SSH ports exposed. So here we do not have any RDP or SSH, even internally. For example, you are trying to access from Azure VM, even though no need to do that. All traffic goes through TLS 443 through Azure portal. So how it works, this guy will type portal.azure.com and establish a simple connection with the portal, and then it will click on connect, establish this TLS with the Bastion, and Bastion will send the uh, HTML back to the local laptop and it talk to these VM over RDP ports. Okay, we don't need any client software here. So user connect from browser, and this is the Azure service, which means it can easily be integrated with Entra ID. Okay, Entra ID, which means RBAC. We can utilize RBAC and give only that access to the developers that they need. No need to give anything else. Just on a portal, give access to the Bastion and access on these. You have nothing else they're supposed to see. Okay. You can also utilize conditional access, MFA. Those things can also be utilized because it has that integrated security and all those logged will be maintained. You can have just-in-time access involved through Entra ID, correct? So we have conditional access, MFA, all those is applicable, integrated through Azure Bastion. You can also have a session level isolation. Each user session is brokered through Azure, reducing the risk of attack. Then you don't need to deploy any other like VPN gateway and other stuff. That's the reason Azure Bastion is a perfect fit for this kind of situation. Now we have pretty decent idea what Azure Bastion is doing and how it is helping us, how people is accessing it, what exactly it does. Now let's try to define what is Azure Bastion. Okay. So what is Azure Bastion? We can simply define Azure Bastion as a fully managed PaaS service. Okay. And it is managed PaaS service. So if you're using normal VM, RDP or jump server or Bastion, then you have to manage that infra, right? You need to take care of the patching and the session and all. But here it is a managed service. No need to do all that. Correct? So it is a fully managed PaaS service that that enables agentless and secure RDP SSH access to the VMs, Azure VMs, directly through the portal. So you are accessing portal and clicking on connect, and you are inside your VM without the need for public IP address on those virtual machines. It is more secure, more safe. So rather than exposing port 3389 or 22 to the internet, Bastion provides access over TLS from Azure portal, effectively acting as a secure jump host. So this is what the Azure Bastion is. Now we have explained what is Azure Bastion. Now let's explain why we need it. Okay, you can easily explain now because we have put it in a solution, so you can easily understand or explain why we need Azure Bastion. First of all, it eliminates public exposure. So eliminates public exposure. Correct. No need to assign public IP address to VMs, reducing attack surface area. Then it is fully managed and hardened, so no need to maintain your own jump host VM, handles the updates, patching, and scaling. It is fully managed. Then secure access through TLS. So all RDP SSH traffic is encapsulated over TLS on port. So no RDP and SSH. And finally, seamless integration. Seamless integration to Entra ID and connect through browser, no native client needed. So all those things that we talked about, that's why we have to use Azure Bastion. And how does it work? We have already seen it. First of all, this guy, you see, this is virtual network. So Azure Bastion still goes inside the subnet in your virtual network in the dedicated subnet name Azure Bastion subnet. Okay, and we have to use the RBAC, give the access. User will access the Azure portal, portal.azure.com, and connect to their VM through Bastion using RDP or SSH. So we are still deploying Azure Bastion inside the virtual network in the dedicated subnet. It's a dedicated subnet name, Azure Bastion subnet. They have to be the name of that dedicated subnet. No agent, no additional software is required on the VM. It leverages VM's private IP address or connectivity. Correct. And we still need public IP on this bastion. Okay, public IP, because that's the reason they will connect over HTTP or 443 dedicated public IP. But we can control everything through RBAC. And these VM do not need any public IP, only private IP, and they can only open their ports to this bastion. Okay, no RD port open on this bastion. And if we talk about pricing, it is per hour pricing. So there is a base price, okay, plus the outbound, which is the usual data Azure way. So it is, well, we always need to check when we go with the pricing because it changes. So for now, it is like 0.19 or 0.20 per hour, because there are multiple SKUs for the Azure Bastion. So what are those SKUs? They are four SKUs. First is developer, second is basic, third is standard, and the most awesome is the premium one. So this is premium. So we have four SKUs of the Azure Bastion. Dev is free, best for quick dev test, no setup needed. Basic is cost effective, but we don't have scaling and all. It is for the small teams. But standard, you'll get multiple things like scalability, and it is recommended by default. It supports VNet peering as well. So VNet peering plus scalability, and you can custom ports and also flexibility as well. If we talk about premium, this is the most awesome for enterprise grade situations, because you may need session recording that can be done. You may need private only access that can be done. It also provide you shareable link, which link could be utilized to share with your colleagues so that they can access directly the virtual machine. Private only means, here I mentioned private only. You don't need public IP there. It directly works through the private endpoint and all into this. Now, with this, I think we have described it enough, but still, if we need to just conclude it with the key features of Azure Bastion, we can say this is secure RDP or SSH without public IP on the virtual machine because it works on TLS. Uh, then it is a PaaS service which is managed. No need to worry about anything. MS will take care. Uh, Standard and Premium provide you scalability. So no need to plan for the scalability. It is there. You can also get session recordings on Premium, and it is seamlessly integrated with Entra ID. So you can utilize all those wonderful features of Entra ID in your Azure Bastion. So that's all about this Azure Bastion. I hope we have described it nicely and it is helpful. Well, thank you for watching and you guys have a wonderful day.